You are listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome into Thursday's edition of KCS An Update. I am Tucker Franklin. Super stoked for today's conversation, today's guest, to talk about a little Chiefs-Eagles. Three biggest storylines. It's going to be Seth Keysor from the Chief of the North newsletter. You know him from the Time Czars podcast. You know him from probably a lot of different things. If you follow the Chiefs, you know Seth Keysor, and we have a really phenomenal conversation about the Chiefs DBs. We talk about Patrick Mahomes, obviously, Clyde Edwards-Helaire's activation, what his role is going to be, and kind of what Steve Spagnuolo is going to do against this pretty dangerous Eagles rushing attack. So really good conversation. Excited for you guys to listen to it. But before we get into that conversation, you know I've got to tell you about our partner at DraftKings. And are you ready for the biggest Sunday in sports? DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 57, has all of the Super Bowl action that you need. New customers can bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Plus, all customers can get in on the Super Bowl 57 excitement with DraftKings Happy Hour Super Boost. Check the DraftKings Sportsbook app every day between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's 5 and 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, in case you don't know, to see what prop bet will be boosted. I've been doing this. I've been running all over to the Kansas side, checking my DraftKings Sportsbook app for the Super Boost, what they got going on. It's some really cool stuff with these Happy Hour Super Boost. Make sure to go check it out. And this is what you got to do. You got to download that DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code KCSN. New customers can bet just $5 on Super Bowl 57 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly, only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code KCSN. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. All right, Seth, thanks for joining me on today's episode. Seth, I have this bit with Joshua Briscoe that I do. Usually on my Thursday episodes, Josh will come on, and I always keep a running tally of how many times he's come on, because he wants to be the leading member of the Time Czars podcast on KCS An Update. I think you've just surpassed him with this appearance right here.
As in all things, I will inevitably surpass Josh. In this, as in many things, one day I'll even love possums more than he does. And every single thing that he does, I do it just better. And so that's kind of, it's actually my, when you get to be my age, you need some goals to keep you going.
Yeah.
And that's why I appreciate Josh always nipping at my heels. It just keeps me youthful.
I think his quote was, Seth has me beat in age, children, and careers. I need to beat him in something. I think that was a direct quote from Josh on the last time that he was on this here program.
That sounds accurate, and it's my mission in life to make sure that he never does. I want to give him things to strive for too.
Right.
So and I would say this to him too. I beat him in well-functioning pancreases as well. These are... Now, should I say that?
Point.
No. But is it funny? Yeah, so why not?
That's hilarious.
I'm going to immediately text him when I get done with this and tell him I said that. It's going to be great.
He's going to tune in now. He's going to be, I haven't told him that you're coming on the podcast either. So he might be a little disgruntled that he's lost his lead, but it's going to be hard for you guys both to beat Nate Taylor, who comes on every Thursday or Tuesday. But
we're used to Nate lapping us in everything. In his ability as a writer, as a reporter, as a coverage guy, as a human, he's just better than us. And so we've kind of accepted that at this point.
He dropped some great nuggets on Tuesday's KCS An Update. So if you haven't gone and listened to that, he talked about opening night for media. Kind of always a circus, you could call it, for Super Bowl opening media night. But Seth, you're here to talk with me about some three big storylines coming into this Chiefs-Eagles game. And I'm sure by the time you guys are listening to this podcast, you've heard every storyline, right? And Seth, we were talking before we started recording. This week, this little 2-week period here before the Super Bowl is almost too much time for the media. Perfect amount of time for the players, too much time for the media.
100%. Today was the first day, and it's still on my Twitter feed. I've been waiting all week for the, so last week, we dealt with a lot of the storylines between Cincinnati and Kansas City, which makes sense.
Yep.
Cincinnati had won 3 in a row against the Chiefs. To the victor goes the trash talk. That's fair. We also knew we'd be enduring is Joe Burrow actually better than Mahomes? We knew we'd endure that. We knew it was going to happen. And to be fair, I think Joe Burrow might be the second best quarterback in the NFL. He's a stud. Him, Allen, Herbert, Hurts, they've all got some legitimate arguments to make. I don't think this week has been so pleasant. And then last week too, there just wasn't much trash talk. Philly fans and Chiefs fans kind of like, hey, we all like Andy Reid.
Yeah.
We all like the Kelsey brothers. We all really like, Mahomes and Hurts. Like, there's a lot of mutual respect. They're in the NFC, we're in the AFC, so there's not like, that whole big rivalry thing. And then what I knew was coming, though, was going to be, because, like you said, it's too much time. 1 week,
It is.
nothing. It was today. Wednesday, actually, maybe it would be. Maybe Hurts is better than Patrick Mahomes. Starts to happen because you knew it couldn't. You knew it had to happen eventually.
Right.
And so I'm just excited for where we're at by Friday, because I think Saturday everyone's going to kind of lay low, but by Friday it's going to be like is Chris Jones actually good? There'll be some revival of the conversation about run fits from 3 years ago or something like that, and I'm here for it. But man, it gets exhausting at a certain point.
It really does. And I love that the Chiefs have kind of embraced the underdog role.
Yeah.
That's kind of what Philly did against the Patriots. They embraced that underdog role. They're laying low. They're staying quiet. Even against the Bengals, they didn't say much. Willie Gay said a little something.
Yeah.
Chris Jones said, "You'll see you at Burrowhead," but that was towards the end of the week, kind of getting up to game time, which nothing that I think was too disrespectful. But I think, as you mentioned, Seth, these two teams do have a lot of respect for each other. Yeah. I have a lot of respect for the Philadelphia Eagles as an organization with Andy Reid. Nick Sirianni, I think, is one of my favorite head coaches outside of Andy Reid in this league. He's just kind of a fun guy to watch coach. There's guys that are fun to watch coach. Him and Vrabel, I think, are two of them. But I think that
Vrabel's a good one. That's a good point.
Yeah. He's a fun one to watch coach. And I love the clip of him just chucking his challenge flag. A lot of coaches will just drop it down. You see Andy Reid will just drop it down.
Yep.
He's heaving it. And I love it when coaches get into it. Yes.
And you love to see that guys like that are legitimately like aggrieved that the call could be so wrong. The last time, I'm trying to think, the only time I can remember seeing Reid that upset, I think it was with Sheffers against the Raiders when they called that roughing the passer. Yep. And he was, screaming at him just over and over. That's terrible. That's terrible. I think that was that play. Because I remember thinking to myself and maybe even tweeting, do you have any idea how badly you have to screw up as a ref to have Andy Reid yelling at you like that? Yeah. Because he never does that. He might stare, but that's about it. Mm-hmm. And so it's so fun watching those guys, like, the Dan Campbells of the world, that it's so personal for them. They're so competitive. And it just makes them crazy, and their reactions. That'll be one fun thing to watch. One great thing about Super Bowls and AFC championships, all the NFL film content is always so fun.
Oh my goodness, yes.
And so if the Chiefs have a good game and you have a few crazy Mahomes plays, we're going to get some good shots of Sirianni just losing his mind, and it's going to be fun.
It will be fun. And so let's get into these three storylines, Seth, because I think the biggest one, and you wrote a piece about this on your Chief of the North Substack. Go check that out, by the way. And over the rookie DBs. I think that this is something that, as a topic, this position group has really matured over this year, because we talked about kind of even going all the way back to training camp, because I was in training camp nearly every day and seeing this rookie DB group. Everyone was saying, that'd be nice to have another veteran back there. I remember that was a big talking point. Chiefs should add another veteran back there. Right. Patrick Peterson, they were believed to be in that sweepstakes with him before he decided to, stay with Minnesota. And so there was a lot of free agent rumors about that even after the draft about bringing somebody in. But again, you look at what this rookie defensive back, I say defensive back because Brian Cook's been playing well recently as well.
Yep.
You look at all of those guys, how they've matured and how they stepped up without L'Jarius Sneed last week, I think is maybe one of the most underrated storylines that people are not talking about, is how the Chiefs D-backs held a very good receiving core to a pedestrian day. I mean, you had a couple of big plays. The T. Higgins touchdown was big. Obviously, the Joe Burrow on fourth down to Jamar Chase. They're going to get theirs like that, because when you throw balls up to those guys like that, that's a 75-25 ball. It's not 50-50 because those guys are just so good. But outside of those two plays, the rookie DBs played very well and even tackled very well.
Yeah, and so there's a lot to look at there. I'll start in reverse because you mentioned the tackling. One advantage that the Chiefs have with this group, with these rookie defensive backs, and then you throw in L'Jarius Sneed, who's an extremely physical player, is they tackle extremely well. And that they don't just tackle well, they hit well, they hit aggressively, they contest blocks well on like wide receiver screens and that kind of stuff. And you can see the benefits that pays off because a lot of like quick wide receiver screens or certain run plays from crud from high school on up are designed to see if your corners can and will tackle. You want to get a running back in space against a corner. And that's not considered like a one-on-one in space, really. That's like considered like a one-on-half. Running backs dream about being one-on-one against a D-back in space because those are guys that they can generally beat. Wide receivers, same thing. They're not breaking tackles from linebackers, but from corners, that's generally considered an advantage. And with this group, all of them, Trent McDuffie's a terrific tackler. He was the first human to be the first one to arrive and tackle Jamar Chase. I'm convinced of it, and he did it multiple times, and that's so cool. And I have to just shout out here because I saw the look on your face. I know you guys are all over this, but the world needs to understand how good Trent McDuffie has been. If he were healthy all season, and he has the misfortune of sharing a rookie year with a guy who's had one of the best rookie defensive back years in history in Sauce. And Sauce is terrific, don't get me wrong. McDuffie is right now, the way he's currently playing, he's an upper tier corner. The way he's currently played. Now, is he like a top 5 corner? I don't think so yet. But as a rookie, it's so hard to even be competent. And he is good at everything. He's good in man. He's got great feet and hips. He's willing to play physically, but he's also, he's grabby, but not quite too grabby. He'll get penalized sometimes, but not often. He pushes the limits of that. He's even better in zone, which as a rookie is weird, but it helps that, those defensive backs out of, I think it's Washington, you see this time after time after time with that particular group. They are asked to do a ton, and he learned it. I could talk about Trent McDuffie for hours, so I'll try not to, but he's that good. Like, he really should have gotten consideration for Defensive Rookie of the Year, but he got hurt. And so really, I tell people right now, L'Jarius Sneed is probably not the Chiefs' best cover corner. He's good, but I think McDuffie's probably a better cover corner. Sneed is just so good at so many things. But when you take all those rookies, so then you get Watson playing at an average to above average level. There's some consistency stuff at times, but he's playing well. And that's, what to say average to above average, it's generally well above average. And he plays physically, he contests well, he's stickier in coverage than you'd think, considering his size. He's not a real quick guy, but he uses his size well to his advantage. And then Josh Williams, who's a great athlete, also has tremendous size. His consistency is a little more up and down. But that's your fourth guy?
Yes.
And they're comfortable with all of them. And for them to do that against the Bengals, that's so impressive because that's a tough group. And then, like you said, Brian Cook, who's gone a little more under the radar because I think it's taken him longer to get in the swing of things. One thing that I really tried to write about was when not just L'Jarius Sneed went down, but then when Willie Gay Jr. went down, that really changed the nature of the Chiefs' defense. And that's why you saw Brian Cook getting so many snaps late, because what Spagnuolo did to adjust, which I thought was great, was, okay, we don't have any other linebackers that can do what Willie does. We don't, and it's not close. So we're going to bring Justin Reed, who, by the way, has been playing tremendous football lately.
Yes, he has.
We're gonna put him in almost that, Dan Sorensen hybrid role, bring him close to the box, and we can do that because we trust Brian Cook to play deep safety, and he did a good job with it. He did have one play, and so like that fourth down, Jamar Chase just ran a really great route.
Yeah.
And Cook thought he needed to attack down because he thought the throw was going to the sticks. It was a great route. He got by one of the best receivers in the league. They were so good. I have no idea what to expect because with rookies, you usually see this up and down. But they're not getting the credit they deserve by and large. And that's going to be huge if they can hold their own to that level against Brown and Smith. It's a very different game on Sunday.
So I think a lot of people are talking about Brown and Smith and being like, oh, these DBs have to cover this tough receiving room.
Oh, yeah.
They covered a tougher receiving room, I think, last week.
Yeah.
When you talk about the Bengals, just top to bottom.
I think so too. Obviously that trio of Brown, Smith, and Goddard is right up there in the league, but it's right up there in the league with, Chase, Higgins, Boyd, Hurst. Now Boyd got hurt, and so that affects things, but it's still a really, really good group. And so that's going to be one of the big matchups for you. And again, that was without L'Jarius Sneed, who's their number one guy. The plan was for him to follow Jamar Chase. Like, that's how much confidence they have in him. And they were missing him. And so now what happens is, there's that domino effect with corners. They've got, if they got Sneed back, which they do, that bumps Williams down to that fourth corner role where you're not relying on him quite as much. And so I think they're going to do a pretty good job. I'm curious whether they play quite as much man as they showed at times with 2i against the Bengals. A.J. Brown is he's just a different kind of player. Like, you just never know when he might just throw someone to the side, like a rag doll and gain 20 yards. I'm curious how they approach it, though, because Burrow and Hurts are such different quarterbacks.
Right. They are very much indeed. And, let's go ahead and talk about that. Let's talk about the Eagles running game. I kind of switched it up a little bit on you just because I think that the way the conversation's going, it just makes sense to talk about this Eagles running attack is stout because they have the best offensive line in the league.
Yep.
You look at those guys top to bottom, I think they're all rated top 10 in PFF's grading system, which is incredible in itself. But just to watch some of the highlights and some of the plays when I was going through and looking at watching some of the runs that they had against the Niners, that offensive line was just manhandling. It wasn't fair. There was the touchdown that Sanders scored, and there he didn't get touched. It was a 10-yard run, and he did not get touched. It's one of those things where you're like watching and just like, holy cow. So Spagnuolo, the front seven, I know we mentioned Willie Gay. He was out, but it sounds like he's going to be back playing. They've got their hands full this week.
They do. And, it's kind of unfortunate, when Linval Joseph was available in the middle of the season, I would have loved to see the Chiefs gobble him up because he's such a stout run defender and has been. And he's had a more important effect than people think on that Eagles team in terms of their run defense, which is really important when you want to get after the passer like they do. And Derek Nottie is a guy who's a useful player, but he's not as stout as Linval Joseph. Brandon Williams is useful, but same thing. They are going to need to, and this is where Philly gets people in trouble. So what do? Do you line up both Williams and Nottie as tackles so you're more stout against the run? Well, the problem is, for one, that hurts your pass rush. And for two, that also, they do so much movement up front in terms of the directions they come from. It's not necessarily just about having stout, powerful guys there. If you got guys that can't necessarily get penetration, you're in trouble. And so it's basically, no matter what type of player you have up front, there's potential problems there. I think the biggest contest in this game is going to be the Chiefs linebackers, because they don't have as good a linebacker group as the 49ers do. Them against that offensive line and trying to figure out a way to where it's not constantly Nick Bolton especially being reached in space, because he's a completely different player when linemen are able to get to him at the second level, as opposed to who he is when he's able to find plays moving downhill. Completely different player. His lack of length really hurts him in those situations. And he's not really a guy who sheds blocks. He can, for as strong as he is, but that lack of length and that lack of really great lateral agility, it gets him in those moments. Gay's actually better in that area because, again, he's got more length, more athleticism. And Bolton, the stark contrast in him as a run defender between when he's moving downhill towards plays, where he's excellent, but when he gets reached and he's reacting, that can be problematic for them. And you want to make sure that you're not seeing some version of, is it zone or duo? It doesn't matter which one, that is reaching Bolton over and over and over. They need to figure out something to do about that early, and I think that's going to be one of the biggest things, Gay and Bolton against that run game. And I'm half convinced that we're going to see Spagnuolo utilize a lot of A-gap blitzes just to say, nope, Nick Bolton's great moving downhill, and we're just going to attack you rather than letting guys reach him, and let's see what you guys can do right at the line of scrimmage. Because that also allows you to incorporate Leo Chanel as well, because off ball, not so much for him right now. We'll see how that goes later on. But at the line, he can manhandle offensive linemen one-on-one. It's kind of funny to watch a linebacker do that. So that, I think you correctly ID'd that as one of the biggest matchups of the game, because that's going to determine really on their side of the ball the flow of the game and exactly how it looks.
And I said this to you before we started recording. If the Chiefs can stop this run game and the corners are playing like we expect them to play, I don't know how the Eagles can move the ball against the Chiefs defense. That's a big if, right? That's a big if the Chiefs stop the run game, because I think that there's a lot of facets in that run game. The Jalen Hurts being on the ground, he's been able to run the ball really effectively. The way they run option plays, I wanted to call them RPOs, but they're not necessarily RPOs. They are option plays.
Yep.
The way he's able to make the decisions so quickly, I think I saw one play with Fred Warner just kind of got lost in it.
Yeah.
And the way that Jalen Hurts was making plays, he just was lost with the way he was reading it. So that's going to be a huge factor as well. And the Chiefs have been able to get after the quarterback as of late, and it's been great to see Chris Jones finally get rid of that albatross on the sack column to get that sack. Frank Clark has been tearing it up in the playoffs. I think DraftKings had his over/under for sacks at a half still. So I think that's wildly low. If you can go get that wherever you are in the DraftKings state, I would go play some currency on that. But I do think that's going to be really interesting, as you mentioned, especially with Spags' reputation against younger quarterbacks and when it comes to coverages and stuff like that.
Yep.
He's going to throw some stuff out there for him, and he's going to make him think, especially when it comes to the passing game.
And that is 100% true. I can't imagine a scenario. This is where the stopping the run becomes so important. One thing that the Eagles and the Niners have in common, very different offensive systems, very different, reliances on different players, but one thing they have in common is that their systems that they run rely on staying ahead of the sticks, ahead of schedule. And one thing that the Eagles have kind of figured out that you don't see quite as much with Shanahan is that for them, 3rd and 6 is still a rundown because they're okay with getting to 4th and 2. And so that allows them to be multiple in all facets, but they do rely on staying ahead of that schedule. And if you can consistently force them to make that decision on 3rd and 6, or consistently get them to a 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, that's just not a scenario they've had to deal with that often this season. And that's where the Chiefs' offense versus the Eagles' defense also is going to dictate some things. And how the first and second quarter go in this game, in my opinion, is massive for the Eagles, because let's say Mahomes comes out just firing, and the Eagles, I think, have a good defense. They haven't been tested a ton against great quarterbacks, or really any great quarterbacks this year.
Yeah.
But on paper, they're terrifying, and I mean, really good corners and really good line play and safeties that they do rely on. I think their linebackers are a little more questionable, but that's a whole other ball of wax. But let's say Mahomes comes out hot, and the Chiefs are able to grab one stop early, or even like a stop or a field goal, and the Eagles get the ball back down 14-3. And again, you can name game scripts all day, but that particular game script, suddenly, now if you're the Eagles, they've been playing from out front almost all year.
Yeah.
And when you're playing out front, you've got everything available to you, and it's kind of the same conversation as the Lamar Jackson conversation. Now, big difference is that Baltimore has provided the man with nothing in receivers. And so they have ways. They've created big plays, and that's one reason you grab A.J. Brown. And Goddard's made big plays, and Smith makes big plays. But you're forcing the issue to where you have to make big plays rather than that just being something that you're doing as part of the natural flow of your offense. So I think that the Chiefs' offense versus the Eagles' defense, it's going to play a pretty big role in what the Chiefs defense versus the Eagles offense looks like as well. Because no matter what the Eagles do on offense, let's say even if they do really well against the Chiefs defense, they very well might, the Chiefs are going to throw the ball all over the yard regardless. That's what they're going to do. I've revealed it. It's out there. But I could see a game script where that makes things tough on the Eagles if they're put in a position they haven't been this year.
So let's talk about that offense. Well, they did get a weapon back with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. McCole Hardman did go on the injured reserve.
Yep.
Hat tip to McCole Hardman for getting back, working back, but then getting injured again. That's tough, especially in a contract year that he's in.
Yeah.
It's tough for him. I hate to see
making a big
happen.
play too. That was a big third down conversion. Yeah. They needed that.
Yeah, he held on to the ball too, which I think was very impressive and all of that, especially when he got full. When I saw the way he went down, I was like, that can't be good on the old pelvis.
Oh.
When he's going down like that and having a guy land on top of him. So no, you hate to see that, but they do get Clyde Edwards-Helaire back. He's activated to the team, and I think that, Seth, we were kind of talking about this. People see Clyde getting activated, and they think automatically. I think some Chiefs fans have fallen into this automatically. Yes. Of wait, what Isaiah Pacheco's been doing so good? How come? What's going to happen now that Clyde's in? And Seth, calm Chiefs Kingdom down. Let them know what's going to happen, because we all know that you already know what's going to happen with Clyde, and what's going to happen here at the Super Bowl.
Well, I mean, as I showed off on the Times R's podcast preceding the AFC Championship game, I mean, I know ball, so I'm able to accurately predict things in a way Josh and Nate just can't. Man, that was fun. That was such a fun. I don't know if you know this. They both predicted the Bengals to win. And I mean, I just came in swinging that Monday. I mean, I spent the first 10 minutes of that show being utterly unbearable. It was great.
Good.
Yeah, no, they deserved it. So the thing with Clyde being back, I do know that the Chiefs like Clyde more than a lot of the fan base does. And at the same time, the Chiefs have liked Pacheco from day one. Well, and then when people ask, well, then why was Clyde seeing more time than him? It's kind of worth noting that even in like week one, Pacheco saw the ball a fair amount. Pacheco had some stuff to work on early. He was always more explosive. He was always faster, always stronger. And I think they wanted to get him involved, but he wasn't seeing running lanes as well as he should early on. And you can actually, I wrote about this a few times, you can watch him in week 1, week 3, week 6, week 9, you know what I mean? And just make your way all the way through the season. And you can see him, and you probably know how important this is from your days pancaking. Guys, I've seen the high school tapes. I have. I think I've even tweeted him out a few times.
Yeah.
And so you know, as a man, when you're sitting there dominating, as you did, your defenders, the running back understanding when to pause and when to wait for the helmet to flash before taking the other way. Exactly. It's not about just sprinting straight ahead. And he needed to work on that. Now, do I wish they'd got him involved more sooner? Yeah, probably. But he really wasn't running the ball as well with some of those things that Clyde actually does really well vision-wise. People think he's got bad vision. I don't think he does. I just don't think he's got the requisite explosion at the NFL level to really take advantage of what he thinks he's seeing. Or what he is seeing, because you'll see him see a helmet flash, he'll go the other way, and he's a tenth of a second too slow.
Yeah.
So anyway, all of that's a long road to a short thought. The team loves Pacheco, and the team loves Jerick McKinnon. And let me tell you, I'm trying to picture Patrick Mahomes' reaction if they said, we're going to maybe take McKinnon off the field on third downs. I don't think that's going to happen, because they know what he does in pass protection. And it's something that Clyde's never been great at. And so then you got Pacheco doing things that Clyde hasn't been particularly great at either. I think what you could see more here, for one thing, it's going to be a smaller role for him. Might be just filling in someone when they're gassed a little bit. Might just be more exclusive to receiving stuff, which makes sense with his skill set regardless. And maybe they try to do a few funky things with personnel in terms of having a couple running backs on the field at once, just to see how they handle it. Because Andy Reid loves doing that. It's like, well, what if everyone's talking about 13 personnel. What if we went out there with 31? What would they do? Let's find out. Just make that part of the first 15. So I think Clyde's role is going to be fairly muted and probably limited to the things that he's good at, because they don't have to ask him to do the things he's not good at anymore, because they got guys who can do those things. And that's the difference between this year and previous years, I think.
I think, yeah, no, it all tracks, and I think that it all makes sense. And I think that B.J. Kissel even said earlier this week that he thinks it's going to be more of like a Ronald Jones role for Clyde in this game, similar to that. And it's a guy probably like Ronald Jones who probably not going to dress out for this game. He's probably gonna be a healthy scratch. So it's he'll be. I'm excited to see what Clyde can do with these two running backs because listen, Isaiah Pacheco and what Jerick McKinnon has been able to do with incorporated into this offense has been incredible. Who would have thought that Jerick McKinnon would be the second best receiving threat on this team in the second half of the season?
Yeah.
It's been wild to see what he's been able to do in the past game, and he's incredible in the pass blocking game. There's a couple times you can see him just knock some receivers off their blocks or knock some linebackers off their blitzes, and it's incredible.
It's so much fun to see, and he also he generally speaking sees it coming, even if it's across the formation. And those are the things, the technique, because he always it's just about want to. The technique matters and that kind of stuff too. Pacheco, just for what it's worth, just as a little side note, he was good at pass protection in college. It's one of the things I really liked about him early. And so I wouldn't be surprised if next year you see some big strides forward in that, because he's getting used to the guys being 20, 30 pounds heavier and twice as fast. And so the technique suddenly matters a lot more. The want to is certainly there. There's never been a lack of Pacheco wanting to hit someone. In anything, like he just, man, I worry about that guy. And so it's just an interesting thing, though. McKinnon, they just add so much value. I think you're right. The Ronald Jones rule is probably more appropriate, with maybe a few routes sprinkled in there. Have him come out of the backfield and, run something out of the slot or something.
He'll probably get more usage than Ronald Jones will. But I think that's kind of the appropriate side of third running back type role. But Seth, we've gone 30 minutes into this podcast and haven't mentioned Patrick Mahomes yet. Can you believe that? That's all going to change because as we wrap up this show, I want to ask you one more, this kind of an honorable mention, right? I realize that this is 4. I can count. This is the 4th storyline I want to talk about, but it seems like a storyline we've been talking about for a long time. Patrick Mahomes and that ankle. Yep. Andy Reid said on Wednesday that he thinks that he can do everything that the game plan calls for him to do. So I'm excited to see what Patrick Mahomes does on the biggest stage once again.
It's going to be a lot of fun. He's played so well this postseason under really tough circumstances. And the Eagles, it's so interesting because the Eagles, they played him last year. And it's just, that's it, basically. They don't have, and the way, that was early in the season, remember. That was before you saw a lot of the adjustments the Chiefs have made. They're running a very different, it's still all Andy Reid staples, but it's very different in terms of personnel percentages, route percentages, where the routes are going. It's very different than what the Eagles faced last year. And obviously they're very different too, personnel-wise. So they don't have the same familiarity that like the Bengals do. And he's played so well, and he's played so well doing things differently. It's kind of like the culmination of what we've seen the last 2 years played out in these playoffs, because I think Patrick Mahomes, playing on a high ankle sprain 2 years ago, isn't able to do the things he did against Jacksonville and against Cincinnati and do the things that were required there without having superpowers. He still has superpowers in his arm. I get that. It allows him to make some crazy throws when he's bouncing off his left foot. But it's been cool to watch his growth as a quarterback, and knowing most quarterbacks don't really peak until they're like 29, 30, and the man is 27. That's fun. That's so fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time. Patrick Mahomes will almost more than certainly get his second MVP award coming up on the NFL Honors. I believe it's on Thursday night. Is when the NFL Honors are. He'll be unable to attend because he has got other things to do.
Yeah,
no, it's been really fun to watch Patrick Mahomes this offseason kind of go out and show his greatness a little bit. I know that a lot of people do get tired of the Patrick Mahomes conversation, the Patrick Mahomes talk, the narrative around Patrick Mahomes, but it's not going around. It's not going away anytime soon.
Yeah.
Because as we mentioned at the top of the show, Seth, people got to say something different, and they're going to say that Jalen Hurts is better than Patrick Mahomes. But deep down in your heart, you listener, know that that's not true. And let them talk.
You can feel it just deep in the chest what the truth of the matter is. And you know what? We've got to start setting Mahomes in this separate category where when we say not as good as Mahomes is not an insult.
Right.
You can be an exceptional quarterback and not be as good as Patrick Mahomes. And that's really, when you're talking about a guy that's doing something that no one else, people could talk about Tom Brady and his 3 titles in his first 4 years. That's incredible. They also had like a top 5 defense every one of those years, but whatever.
Right.
And like that, miss me with, I'm going to get into a whole thing, but it's like, he got that ring. Yep. They won 13-10. That's different. But they've just, because he wanted whatever.
Yeah.
Brady's the GOAT, greatest winner of all time. We all know that. But no one's done what Mahomes has done. And that's why people are never going to stop hearing about it, because it just keeps getting better and better and better and better and better. And that's such a cool thing because no one knows where the cap is. And I don't either. It's exciting.
He keeps one-upping himself. That's what's so impressive. Is that like he sets the bar and then we'll just outdo the bar continually.
Right.
And it's one of those things that is crazy. And you even mentioned Tom Brady. Adam Vinatieri basically won 3 of those rings for him. So, I mean.
Well, that's true. And you know what? I like that, and I'm going to steal that line from now on. It's just like when someone says, well, Tom Brady has 7 rings, I'm going to say, well, Vinatieri has 3, and Belichick's got another one. We'll give Tom credit for 3 of them.
Yeah.
Well, the Bucs pass rush really won that one. No, I'm kidding. It's he's become so much more likable since he left New England that that it's made it a lot harder to hate him. That was very inconsiderate of him.
Yeah, I know. Why would he do that? Why would he humanize himself? That's so rude. You're right though. That the Bucs pass rush did win that game for him.
Yeah, so there you go. So now we're talking like 2 Super Bowls. So now Mahomes can tie up. Oh man, okay. Look, any Brady fans that happen to watch this, we're kidding. Please don't just tweet Tucker. He wants to talk to you about it.
Yes, please tweet me about it. I was tweeting about LeBron on Tuesday night when he broke the record, and I got plenty of people replying to me about that. Let's have a conversation about Brady while we're at it. So just to go ahead and pile on all of the GOAT talk onto my Twitter. Well, that's fine.
I like it.
Seth, thank you for joining me on today's episode of KCS and Update. Really appreciate you taking some time hopping on with me and talking some Chiefs. This game is going to be exciting. I'm looking forward to it.
Hey, me too, man. I appreciate you having me. This is fun.
That's going to do it for today's episode of KCS and Update. Make sure to subscribe and like the video if you are watching on YouTube. Make sure to follow us on your favorite podcast platform if you are listening to the audio version. Thank you so very much. Leave a 5-star rating and review if you do feel so inclined. But if you don't like us, don't leave a rating or a review, because that's how it works. By listening to this podcast, you agree to those terms and conditions. So thank you for listening and sticking all the way to the end of the podcast. Next week, I'll be back. We'll still have KCS and Update next week, and next week I'll be back with someone else to talk about the Chiefs and the Eagles Super Bowl. So until then, I'll talk to you guys later.